Are you sure you are in the right restaurant? This place isn't for low lives. These were the words of a waiter to Vanessa, a black lady. In a moment he's going to regret those lines. Hello everyone, before we begin today's story I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss out channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more jaw-dropping stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now let's get back to our main character. The first insult wasn't loud. It was whispered, sharp enough to cut, soft enough to deny. The kind of word that tells you exactly what someone thinks you are. It happened on a Friday night at Maison du Lys, the kind of restaurant where arrogance is part of the dress code. Everyone there believed money could buy class. But that night proved it couldn't buy character. Vanessa Cole walked in alone, tall, elegant, and glowing in a white silk dress. Her hair perfectly pinned, her poise effortless. But the moment she stepped through the door, the waiter at the podium, Ethan, rolled his eyes like he'd just been handed a chore. "Good evening," she said, her tone warm, respectful. "Reservation for Vanessa Cole." He glanced at her, then at the list, smirking. "Are you sure it's this restaurant, ma'am?" The way he said ma'am wasn't polite. It was mockery dipped in fake courtesy. She smiled, unbothered. "Yes. Under Cole." He scanned the list, sighed dramatically, then pointed toward a small table near the kitchen door. "That's the only one available," he said. It wasn't. There were empty tables with linen napkins folded like crowns, but he didn't even offer. Vanessa sat anyway, her posture calm, her dignity louder than his attitude. Moments later, Ethan approached with a smirk that didn't reach his eyes. "So, are we celebrating something tonight?" he asked. "Yes," she said softly. "Something like that." He chuckled. "That's sweet. Anniversary? Promotion, or maybe a refund check came in?" She looked up, directly at him. No anger. Just silence. He shifted slightly, uncomfortable that his cruelty didn't land. When she asked for the wine list, he hesitated. "You know, most guests usually stick to the house red. It's simpler." She raised an eyebrow. "And yet, I asked for the list." His smirk deepened. "Sure thing." He left, muttering something under his breath, a slur wrapped in sarcasm. The couple at the next table heard it. The woman frowned, but said nothing. The man just shook his head. 10 minutes later, Ethan returned, bottle in hand, grin wider now. "This one," he said, "costs more than what most people make in a week. You still want it?" Vanessa leaned back in her chair. "I can afford to appreciate quality." He scoffed. "Suit yourself." And then, with deliberate precision, he poured. Not into the glass, but onto her. A river of red wine cascaded over her white silk dress, staining it instantly. Gasps echoed through the dining room. Ethan froze for a moment, pretending shock, then laughed under his breath. "Oh no," he said, voice dripping with fake remorse. "Guess accidents happen, right?" Vanessa didn't move. She didn't scream. She looked down at the red spreading across her dress, then back up at him. "You did that on purpose," she said. He smirked. "Careful, lady. Accusing staff can get you removed." People at nearby tables shifted awkwardly, pretending not to stare but recording anyway. She stood slowly, the crimson fabric clinging to her legs. Her voice was steady, calm, dangerous in its restraint. "I'd like to speak to your manager." Ethan leaned in, his words venom wrapped in sugar. "I am the manager tonight. So if you'd like to complain, write it on a napkin." Vanessa blinked once, then nodded. "All right." But just as she turned to leave, the real manager, a middle-aged man in a gray vest, rushed over. "Ma'am, what seems to be the issue?" Ethan jumped in first. "She's upset about a spill." It was an accident. Vanessa didn't look at him. She looked at the manager instead. Your waiter deliberately disrespected me. The manager frowned slightly. I'm sure it wasn't deliberate. Ethan's one of our best. Ethan smiled, smug, victorious. The manager continued, tone patronizing. Look, I understand accidents happen. Maybe next time, try not to wear something so delicate. Red wine does stain. The restaurant went quiet again. Even the piano player paused. Vanessa stood there, covered in wine, pride intact, surrounded by silence that said everything. She took a slow breath. Don't worry, she said quietly. There won't be a next time. The manager sighed with relief, thinking it was over. That's probably for the best. Vanessa smiled faintly. You're right. It is for the best. She picked up her bag, handed him a white business card, and said, have this sent to dry cleaning, and keep the receipt. I'll see you soon. Then she walked out, every step echoing like a promise. Ethan laughed once she was gone. Entitled much? The manager chuckled. Some people just don't know where they belong. They didn't know that the woman they mocked didn't just belong there. She owned the land beneath their feet. Because in less than 12 hours, both men would wake up to find their names erased from the staff list. And her name, printed on the deed. The restaurant they used to humiliate her now had her signature above the word owner. If you've ever watched someone get disrespected for who they are, stay with me. You'll want to hear how this ends. The morning after humiliation always feels the same, quiet, slow, and full of the kind of calm that doesn't last. By 7 a.m., Maison du Lys looked exactly the way it always did, polished glass doors, fresh lilies on every table, the faint smell of lemon polish and roasted coffee drifting through the air. But the staff? The staff carried something different in their eyes, whispers. Everyone had seen the video. Someone had recorded it, the waiter's smirk, the wine spilling, the silence that followed. Overnight, it had spread through a private city group chat like wildfire. The caption read, "When racism wears a uniform." Ethan hadn't seen it yet. He walked into work humming, adjusting his tie, spinning his apron around his waist with that same swagger he wore like a crown. He greeted a few coworkers who didn't look up. Rough crowd this morning, he muttered. No one replied. Behind the counter, the hostess scrolled her phone, eyes wide. When he approached, she locked it instantly and forced a smile. Morning. What's with everyone? He asked. She shrugged. You'll see. At that exact moment, the manager, Mr. Walker, came storming out of his office, phone in hand, face pale. He was mid-conversation, voice low but trembling. I'm telling you, we're not responsible for that video being online. It was taken without permission. He stopped when he saw Ethan. You, he said. In my office. Now. Ethan frowned. What's this about? But the look on Walker's face made him follow. Inside the office, the air felt thick. Walker tossed his phone onto the desk. The video was still playing, frozen on the frame of Ethan standing over the black woman, red wine spilling like blood across her dress. The caption beneath it read. He laughed while she bled dignity. Ethan blinked, forcing a laugh. You're kidding. It's just a TikTok. People blow everything up these days. Walker wasn't laughing. This has 200,000 views, in 6 hours. People are tagging the restaurant's page, calling for your firing. My inbox is on fire. Ethan crossed his arms. Let it blow over. It's not like anyone cares that much. It's just another. Walker slammed the desk. Don't finish that sentence. For once, Ethan shut up. The older man ran a hand over his face, pacing. I told you to watch your attitude with guests. But this? He gestured at the phone. This isn't just bad behavior. This is a PR nightmare. Ethan scoffed. Oh please. It's not like she's somebody. Just a woman with money for one meal and a chip on her shoulder. Walker froze mid-step. Do you even know who she was? Ethan shrugged. Some lawyer's wife, probably. The manager's lips pressed into a thin line. You should pray that's all she was. Because what neither of them knew was that upstairs, in the building next door, she was already signing the final transfer papers. The sale of Maison Dulis had been in motion for weeks. The ink just needed one last signature. And that signature, written in graceful black ink, read, Vanessa A. Cole. Downstairs, Ethan poured himself a coffee, still smirking. He didn't notice the new suits walking past the window, legal consultants from her firm. He didn't notice the real estate agents stepping out of black cars. He didn't notice the small, gold-lettered envelope that had been slid under the front door. But the hostess did. She picked it up, confused. On the front, in simple handwriting, it read, To management. Walker tore it open impatiently, expecting another complaint letter. Instead, he found a crisp, official-looking document with a single line highlighted in gold ink. Ownership transfer effective immediately. His breath caught. He read it again. And again. The date was today. The buyer's name? Vanessa A. Cole. Walker's heart began to race. Vanessa, he whispered. He looked up slowly, horror spreading across his face. Ethan, he said, voice suddenly quiet. What did she say before she left last night? Ethan shrugged, still half distracted. Something about seeing us soon. Why? Walker didn't answer. He just stared at the paper like it was a death sentence. At that exact moment, the front doors opened. He heard heels on marble, slow, steady, deliberate. And every whisper in the room went silent. She was back, and this time, she wasn't asking for service. She was coming to serve justice. The sound of heels on marble has a rhythm power recognizes. Every step Vanessa took through those glass doors seemed to echo louder than the last. The air shifted, conversations died mid-sentence. Even the hum of the refrigerator behind the bar sounded nervous. She wasn't in white silk now. She wore a dark tailored suit, sharp lines, clean edges, the color of control. Her presence didn't announce wealth, it announced finality. The hostess froze. Good morning, ma'am. Do you? Vanessa smiled. You may call your manager. Her voice was calm, the kind of calm that makes people stand straighter. Walker appeared from his office clutching the envelope like evidence from a crime scene. For a brief second, the two of them stared at each other across the dining room, the man who had dismissed her, and the woman whose dignity he'd tried to cheapen. Miss Cole, he began, his mouth dry. I didn't expect. No, she interrupted softly, you didn't. She gestured toward the tables, the spotless cutlery, the staff standing half-hidden behind the bar. Everything looked so expensive this morning. Ethan appeared from the hallway, still holding his coffee, confusion twisting across his face. What's she doing here? He whispered, not quietly enough. Vanessa turned her head, and that single look erased the smirk he hadn't realized he was wearing. She reached into her bag and placed a slim folder on the nearest table. Inside, she said, are the documents confirming that as of 8 a.m. today, I am the new owner of Maison Dulis. The words fell into the room like a stone into still water. No one spoke. Even Walker's breath seemed to stop. When he finally moved, it was only to pull out a chair, as if habit demanded courtesy even to the woman he'd wronged. Vanessa didn't sit. I came here last night to experience this place before finalizing the purchase, she continued. I wanted to see the service, the culture, the respect. Her eyes rested on Ethan. Her eyes rested on Ethan. I saw enough. Ethan's coffee cup trembled slightly in his hand. He forced a laugh. You're joking. She tilted her head. Do I look amused? Walker stepped forward quickly. Ms. Cole, I assure you, last night was an unfortunate misunderstanding. Was it? she asked. Because to me, it looked very deliberate. And judging by this morning's video views, the world seems to agree. She slid her phone across the table. The screen glowed with the video paused at the exact moment the wine struck her dress. 300,000 views. 10,000 comments. Headlines already forming: Racist waiter humiliates black woman in luxury restaurant. Walker's face drained of color. Damage control, he muttered. Vanessa smiled faintly. Control is a fascinating word, Mr. Walker. You lose it the second you think you own it. She turned to Ethan. You wanted attention last night, she said. Congratulations. You have it. He opened his mouth, but she continued before he could breathe an excuse. I'm not here for revenge. I'm here for reconstruction. Her words were steady, deliberate. I'm firing no one today. Not yet. I'm simply observing. Because before this place changes, I need to know who built its rot. A murmur rippled through the staff, half fear, half relief. Ethan stared at the floor, his confidence leaking away one drop at a time. Walker wiped his forehead, already calculating how to keep his position under her new leadership. Vanessa moved toward the bar. She traced a finger along the polished counter, stopping where the stain from last night's spill had been scrubbed out. It's funny, she said quietly. You can clean the surface all you want. Some stains stay invisible until the right light hits them. Then she looked up at the ceiling lights. Consider this morning that light. She gathered the folder, tucked it under her arm, and headed for the stairs that led to the office balcony overlooking the dining room. From there, her voice carried clearly. In 2 hours, this restaurant will close for a private meeting. Staff only. Everyone will be present. We'll review new policies, contracts, and yes, last night's footage in full. Someone gasped. Ethan's knuckles whitened around the coffee cup until it cracked. Walker swallowed hard. Ms. Cole, surely this isn't necessary. It's essential, she said. If you want to serve excellence, you start by serving accountability. She descended the steps and paused by the front doors. Oh, and one more thing, she added without turning around. From now on, the dress code doesn't apply only to guests. It applies to behavior. Then she left, leaving the scent of expensive perfume and justice in the air. The doors closed behind her with a quiet click that sounded a lot like Judgment Day. Walker exhaled, shoulders sagging. Ethan finally spoke, voice thin. She can't actually own this place, can she? The hostess looked up from the printed email she'd just received. Her voice shook as she read aloud the header. Official notice, ownership transfer, effective immediately. The dining room fell silent again. Every sound, every whisper, every trace of last night's arrogance was gone, replaced by something new, fear. In 2 hours, the meeting would begin. And for the first time, the men who laughed would learn what it feels like to be on the menu. He didn't know who he was mocking. But he was about to find out the hard way. 2 hours later, the restaurant that once buzzed with polished laughter and clinking wine glasses was silent. The chandeliers glowed softly, casting golden reflections on empty tables. Every chair was pushed neatly into place except for one long table in the center, the kind reserved for investors, critics, or royal guests. Today, it was for the staff. Ethan sat near the end, stiff-backed, eyes darting toward the door every few seconds. His crisp white shirt was buttoned wrong, his confidence had disappeared somewhere between his locker and the dining room. Across from him, the hostess twisted a napkin in her hands. No one spoke above a whisper. The air tasted of dread and perfume, the scent Vanessa had left behind that morning. Then, the doors opened. She entered not with fanfare, but with quiet gravity, that kind of silence that makes you sit straighter without realizing why. In her hands, a slim laptop. Behind her, 2 suited assistants trailed, carrying files and a small black case. No greetings. No smiles. Good afternoon, she said, her tone smooth, measured. Today, I'd like to talk about culture, not cuisine, not cocktails. Culture. She placed the laptop on the table, opened it, and the screen lit up. The frozen image of last night's moment, red wine arcing midair, her face just before impact, stared back at them. A few staff members flinched. "Play it," she said. The video rolled. Every detail was there. Ethan's sneer. The way he said, "People like you can't afford this place." The laughter of a nearby table, uneasy but unchallenged. Her quiet composure. The stunned silence that followed. When it ended, Vanessa didn't speak for a long moment. She simply let the image fade into the black screen, the hum of the air conditioner the only sound left. Finally, she looked up. "Tell me," she said softly, "what do you see?" No one answered. "Honesty," she added, "is now mandatory in this room." The hostess swallowed. "Disrespect, ma'am." "Embarrassment." Vanessa nodded. "Whose?" Ethan shifted in his chair. "Look, I already said I'm sorry. I didn't mean." "Didn't mean?" she cut in. "You didn't mean to spill the wine, or you didn't mean to expose what you really think when you see someone who doesn't look like your idea of first class." He froze. The room seemed to shrink around him. Walker tried to intervene. "Ms. Cole, maybe we should." "No, Mr. Walker. You'll speak when we reach your part." Her assistants began passing folders down the table. Inside were copies of customer complaint reports from the past 3 years. Vanessa continued, "These are the complaints this restaurant received before I acquired it. Take a guess how many involved service discrimination." Silence. 116, she said, tapping the folder. "Do you know how many were investigated properly?" 3. Ethan lowered his gaze. Walker stared at the tablecloth, his throat tight. Vanessa's voice didn't rise, but it carried a weight heavier than shouting. "This is not about a glass of wine. It's about rot. And rot, Mr. Walker, doesn't start on the floor. It starts at the top." Walker's lips parted, but she continued before he could defend himself. "You built a place where respect was optional and prejudice passed as customer intuition. You hired people who thought judgment was part of the dress code. And now," she turned the laptop toward him, "you get to watch what happens when the people you thought beneath you write the next chapter." She pressed play again. But this time, the video didn't stop after the spill. There was more. Footage no one had seen yet. Security camera angle, the kitchen. Ethan laughing with another waiter, mocking her accent, mimicking her voice, calling her charity case with lipstick. The laughter, the clinking of glasses. Then him whispering, "Bet she'll still tip 20% to look classy." The staff's faces went pale. Vanessa paused the footage, looked directly at him. "You see, when people think no one's watching, their truth comes out. But someone was." She gestured to the side. One of her assistants placed a small USB stick on the table. "The cameras in this restaurant are mine now. But that recording? It's from last night. Before the purchase. Before you realized who I was." Ethan's jaw tightened. "So what, you're gonna ruin my life for one mistake?" Vanessa's eyes softened, but her words didn't. "Your mistake wasn't spilling wine, Ethan. It was spilling your hate and expecting no one to clean it up." The hostess gasped quietly. Vanessa walked slowly around the table, each step deliberate. "I'm not here to humiliate anyone. But make no mistake, consequences will happen. Because I didn't buy this place to own it. I bought it to fix it." She stopped behind Walker. "You, Mr. Walker, will step down as general manager effective immediately. You may stay on as an advisor for 30 days, unpaid, to assist in implementing our new ethics program. After that, you're done." Walker's shoulders slumped, but he nodded, a man too tired to fight fate. Then she turned to Ethan. "You will not be fired," she said, and everyone looked up, surprised. "You'll report to me directly. You'll attend every bias training session, every employee seminar. And for the next month, you'll serve tables in the community center cafe that feeds the homeless every Friday. No uniform. No hierarchy. Just humility. His face went red. You can't make me. I can, she said simply. Because that cafe belongs to the same foundation that owns this restaurant now. A ripple went through the staff, shock, disbelief, awe. Vanessa returned to her seat at the head of the table. Maison du Lys will reopen next week, she said. New management, new menu, new mission, no one eats here unless they understand what respect tastes like. She closed the laptop and stood. Then, with one final glance toward the table, she said quietly. You wanted to know what power looks like, Ethan? It looks like a black woman deciding the story doesn't end with humiliation. And with that, she walked out. For a long time, no one moved. Then the hostess whispered what everyone was thinking. She didn't just buy a restaurant. She bought justice. But Vanessa's story wasn't done. The video would go viral that evening, and the ripple it created would reach far beyond that dining room. Make sure you're subscribed, because what happens next will make your jaw drop. By evening, the video wasn't just online, it was everywhere. 3 million views. 80,000 comments. Headlines screamed across every social feed like wildfire. Racist waiter exposed after black woman buys the restaurant. Power, prejudice, and payback, the wine that changed everything. Clips of Vanessa's confrontation looped endlessly, her calm voice, her piercing stare, the single line that broke the internet. Control is a fascinating word, Mr. Walker. You lose it the second you think you own it. People stitched it, quoted it, remixed it into soundtracks. News anchors debated it. Hashtags were born overnight, hashtag the owner in heels, hashtag Vanessa Cole, hashtag serve justice. The world didn't just see a story about a racist waiter. They saw something bigger, a mirror held up to every quiet humiliation black people had ever swallowed just to keep their peace. Meanwhile, inside Maison du Lys, the staff tried to work through the chaos. Calls flooded the reservation line, half demanding to support the new owner, half begging for interviews. Journalists camped outside on the cobblestone sidewalk, their cameras glinting through the front windows. Ethan hadn't been seen since the meeting. Walker sat alone in his office, packing his framed awards and unopened bottles of imported wine. His phone buzzed with emails from corporate lawyers, public relations teams, and reporters. All asking the same question, how could you let this happen? He stared at the screen and whispered, because I thought I was untouchable. Across town, Vanessa sat by the window of her penthouse overlooking the city skyline. The glow of her phone screen lit her face, messages pouring in by the hundreds. Some from strangers. Some from people she hadn't heard from in years. You didn't just buy a restaurant. You bought our dignity. That moment when you said, Reconstruction, I cried. We needed this. We needed you. Her assistant, Maya, stood beside her. CNN wants an interview, she said quietly. And Forbes just reached out for a cover story. Vanessa smiled faintly. I'm not interested in fame. I'm interested in impact. But her eyes betrayed a flicker of weariness, the kind that comes when vindication meets exhaustion. Because for every voice praising her courage, there were others twisting the narrative. Online, threads started forming in dark corners. Comments that stung more than they surprised her. Here we go again, playing the race card. She probably set it up. Maybe she bought it just to make a scene. The digital world was applauding her on one side and dissecting her on the other. And like every black woman who ever dared to demand respect, she stood at the intersection of admiration and resentment. Still, she didn't flinch. Because beneath all the noise, the truth had already begun its work. By the next morning, Maison du Lys became a symbol. News vans lined the street. A small crowd gathered out front, not to protest, but to applaud. And at the center of it all, standing beside the entrance in her dark tailored suit, was Vanessa. She didn't hold a press conference. She didn't rehearse a speech. She simply unlocked the doors at exactly 9 a.m., turned the sign from closed to open, and greeted the first guest with a smile. It was an elderly woman in a church hat. Her hands trembled slightly as she approached. "Miss Cole," she said, voice cracking. "My daughter showed me your video last night. I just wanted to see the place where it happened." Vanessa nodded, eyes soft. "You're welcome here. Please, sit anywhere you like." The woman smiled. "You have no idea how many times I've been ignored in restaurants like this. But today, I just wanted to sit where the world changed." That sentence broke something open inside Vanessa, not pain, not pride, but purpose. Because now she understood, this wasn't just her story anymore. It belonged to every person who had ever been made to feel small and chose dignity instead of rage. Inside, the staff worked under new policies. The training programs had begun. Ethan had returned quietly that morning, wearing a plain black apron instead of his white waiter's jacket. No one mocked him now. No one spoke at all, really. He moved differently, slower, careful. Every word measured, every table approached with respect that wasn't rehearsed but real. Vanessa watched from the corner, unseen. When he caught her reflection in the mirror, their eyes met, and in that second, she saw no arrogance left in him. Only shame. And maybe, beneath it, the beginning of change. But the peace didn't last long. By midday, an envelope arrived. Hand-delivered. Embossed seal. Corporate letterhead. Walker burst into the office, holding it with trembling fingers. "They're coming," he said. Vanessa looked up from her desk. "Who's coming?" "The investors. The old board. They're furious. They want a meeting, today." She leaned back in her chair, expression unreadable. "Of course they do," she said. They were comfortable when profit came from silence. Walker hesitated. "They're threatening to pull funding. To seize control back." Vanessa smiled faintly. "Then they'll have to fight me in daylight." She stood, smoothed her jacket, and walked toward the door. Her heels clicked like a countdown. "Prepare the meeting room, Mr. Walker. Let's see how much truth the old guard can stomach." Outside, the crowd had grown. Camera flashes, murmurs, tension. But inside, the woman they called the owner in heels was preparing for another battle, not with a waiter this time, but with an empire built on quiet prejudice and expensive smiles. Because if last night had been personal, tonight would be systemic. And this time, she wasn't just fighting for herself, she was fighting for every black woman who had ever been underestimated, undervalued, or unseen. In the boardroom above the glittering restaurant, the stakes were about to change. The old money thought they owned the name. But Vanessa was about to teach them that ownership means something deeper, not possession, but power. The boardroom was a fortress of glass and arrogance. 12 leather chairs. One long mahogany table polished until it looked like liquid shadow. A wall of windows overlooked the city, sharp, cold, corporate. Vanessa entered like she'd been here 1,000 times. She hadn't. But she walked as if she owned every inch of oxygen in the room, because, technically, she did. The investors sat waiting, 7 men, 3 women, all white, all in suits that cost more than some people made in a year. Their expressions were practiced, polite, offended, performatively calm. At the head of the table sat Leonard Crane, senior partner, old money, the kind of man who used the word girl for every woman under 50. He didn't stand when she entered. He simply said, "Miss Cole, let's make this quick." Vanessa took her seat at the opposite end. The air between them felt colder than the marble beneath her heels. Crane tapped a pen against the table. "You've caused quite a mess." Vanessa smiled. "You mean I revealed one?" A murmur ran down the table, an exhale of annoyance disguised as civility. Crane's jaw tightened. "Your video has gone viral. Our brand's reputation is in flames. The restaurant group's stock dropped 9% overnight. And that," she replied, "is the price of pretending racism doesn't exist in fine dining." Let's stay professional, another man said. You could have handled this internally. Internally? Vanessa's laugh was soft but sharp. I was handled internally last night, with a glass of wine to the face and an accusation that I didn't belong. I'm not the problem. I'm the mirror. Crane leaned back, smirking. You bought one restaurant. Don't mistake that for power. We can vote you out before your coffee cools. Vanessa opened her briefcase. Inside, a thin black folder and a small silver recorder. Funny, she said. You should mention voting. She pressed play. A familiar voice filled the room, Crane's. It's not that I'm racist, but you know how they are. You hire too many of them and service quality drops. Keep them in the kitchen, the guests prefer it that way. The words echoed, ugly, undeniable. The color drained from Crane's face. The other board members stared, their silence heavier than denial. Vanessa looked around the table. That recording was taken from a shareholders' dinner 2 months ago. Your dinner, Mr. Crane. I wasn't supposed to be there, but the universe enjoys irony. He slammed his hand on the table. You have no right. No, she cut in, voice like steel. You have no shame. She stood, calm, composed. I didn't buy Maison du Lys to play pretend. I bought it to start a reckoning. This restaurant was the crown jewel of your portfolio, the place you used to brag about diversity while your staff humiliated people who looked like me. Well, now it belongs to someone who won't smile through your bigotry. A woman at the table, younger, shifted nervously. Ms. Cole, perhaps we can find common ground. Common ground? Vanessa repeated. Sure. Let's build it on truth. She slid the black folder across the table. Inside are 32 verified employee testimonies, every one detailing racial harassment, pay discrimination, or customer bias ignored by management. Signed, dated, and notarized. No one reached for it. No one blinked. Vanessa leaned forward, her tone low but cutting. You didn't lose 9% because of me. You lost it because people finally saw what your luxury costs. Crane's voice dropped to a growl. You're playing a dangerous game, Ms. Cole. She smiled faintly. Then you should have picked a safer opponent. For the first time, he looked uncertain. It wasn't the uncertainty of fear, not yet. It was the kind that comes when a man realizes his era is ending. Vanessa walked to the window. Below them, the city pulsed with life, cars, lights, people moving through their stories. You built your empire on elegance, she said, staring out. I'm going to rebuild it on equity. And the truth is, that's worth more. She turned back to face them. As of this morning, several major publications have reached out. I'll be sitting down with the New York Times this weekend. The narrative will not be your version of events, it will be mine. And the world will know that silence is no longer profitable. Crane's pen snapped in his hand. You're finished here, he hissed. No, Vanessa replied softly. You are. She pulled another document from her case, the new shareholder structure. Majority control had shifted overnight through acquisitions her team made quietly while the internet was busy debating her video. Her name sat at the top, Vanessa Cole Holdings, 52%. The room went dead still. Crane's mouth opened, but no sound came. Vanessa met his eyes. You taught me something last night, she said. When people like you think you're in control, you stop watching the details. That's where I live, in the details. One of the board members cleared his throat. What do you intend to do with this power? Redefine luxury, she said. Because dignity should never depend on a price tag. She gathered her papers, turned toward the door, then paused. Oh, and one more thing. Her gaze locked on Crane. I'm naming the new initiative after something you'll never understand. He sneered. What's that? She smiled. Grace. Then she walked out, leaving a silence that no amount of money could fill. Outside the boardroom, her assistant waited with wide eyes. "How bad was it?" she whispered. Vanessa's answer was calm. They tried to fight truth with ego. Ego lost. But as they stepped into the elevator, Vanessa's phone buzzed again. A text from an unknown number. "You think this is over? Watch your restaurant tomorrow." She stared at the message, her reflection flickering in the elevator's mirrored wall. Power always comes with a price. And somewhere, someone was already planning to collect. The next morning, Maison Dulis would not open its doors. Not because Vanessa chose silence, but because someone else chose sabotage. The war for dignity was no longer just moral. It was personal. If you're still here, you already know, this isn't just a story. Hit like if you feel that. Morning came heavy. Gray skies hung over the city like a warning. The rain didn't fall, it hovered, waiting. Outside Maison Dulis, a small crowd gathered, umbrellas bobbing, murmuring. The front doors, locked. A bold red notice slapped across the glass. Closed by order of the health department. The words were surgical, official, and completely false. Inside, the restaurant was spotless. The counters gleamed. The kitchen smelled of lemon and polish, not rot. Vanessa stood in the middle of the dining room, staring at the paper like it was an insult written directly to her ancestors. Walker entered from the back, face pale. "It's a setup." "I know," she said quietly. "There's no record of an inspection scheduled. No violations filed. Nothing." Her phone buzzed, an email from the city department. "Your establishment has been flagged for review pending complaint." And the sender's address was the restaurant group's corporate legal office. Vanessa's eyes narrowed. "Crane." Walker rubbed his temples. "He's trying to bury you. If this sticks, you'll lose your license before the week's out." Vanessa turned slowly toward him, and for a long moment, she didn't say a word. Then she smiled, not kindly, but knowingly. Let him try. By noon, reporters were outside again, flashing cameras through the windows. Vanessa Cole under investigation. Restaurant empire strikes back. Headlines were multiplying faster than truth could travel. Inside, Vanessa's staff gathered nervously. The same people who once feared her now looked to her for strength. "Is it true?" the hostess asked. "Are they shutting us down?" Vanessa shook her head. "Not if I shut them down first." She turned to Walker. "Get me the press. All of them." He blinked. "All? All of them. I'm not hiding behind rumors. I'm ending this in daylight." 2 hours later, she stood at the podium in front of the restaurant. Rain misted over her hair, catching the light. Behind her, the staff, united, silent. In front of her, microphones, cameras, 100 curious eyes. She took a breath. "This morning," she began, "this restaurant, my restaurant, was falsely accused of violating health codes. We have never failed an inspection. We have nothing to hide." Cameras clicked like gunfire. "But what you should ask," she continued, her tone sharpening, "is why this happened. Ask who filed the complaint. Ask who benefits from trying to silence a black woman who dared to own her story." The crowd murmured. She let them. "Because this isn't about food," she said. "It's about fear. Fear of accountability. Fear that one act of truth could inspire thousands more." She gestured toward the red notice still taped to the glass. "This," she said, tapping it once, "is not justice. It's retaliation. And it will not stand." Then she stepped aside and motioned to someone behind her. A man approached, tall, dark suit, silver tie, briefcase in hand. "Ladies and gentlemen," Vanessa said, "this is Inspector Darren Holt, the real chief of the city's Health and Safety Division." Gasps rippled through the crowd. The inspector nodded, his expression unreadable. "I can confirm," he said into the microphone, "there was no official order to close this establishment. No inspection conducted. No violation on record. This notice, he held up the red paper, is a forgery. Reporters erupted. Cameras surged forward. Vanessa remained still, calm amid the chaos. "Thank you, Inspector," she said softly. "I believe that's all the clarity we need." But Holt didn't leave. He turned to her, voice lower, serious. "There's something else you should know. The complaint came from an anonymous corporate account. But when we traced the routing server..." He paused. "It led directly to Mr. Leonard Crane's office." The crowd exploded. Gasps, shouts, questions flying like sparks. Vanessa exhaled, slow, deliberate. There it was. The trap he set, snapped shut on himself. That evening, the story dominated every headline. Power play backfires. Black female owner outsmarts billionaire board. Racist retaliation exposed. In less than 24 hours, Crane's reputation went from untouchable to radioactive. Vanessa watched it unfold from her office window, the same spot where she'd once stood as a customer, invisible and disrespected. Now the world was watching him burn while she stayed silent. Walker entered quietly. "They're calling it a revolution." She smiled faintly. "No, it's just truth doing its job." But beneath the calm, there was a pulse of something deeper, not satisfaction, but grief. Because every victory like this was born from a wound that never should have existed. Later that night, Vanessa returned to the dining room. The tables were empty again. The storm had passed, but the air still buzzed with what it had carried. She walked to the center of the room, the same spot where the wine had spilled days ago. The carpet had been replaced, but she could still see it. That stain wasn't gone. It was reborn, in headlines, in hashtags, in hearts that now saw the truth clearly. Her phone buzzed. A message from Maya, her assistant. "You won, Vanessa. Crane's board is collapsing. They're selling the rest of their holdings. You own the brand now. 100%. Vanessa stared at the message, then locked her phone. Winning felt heavy. Because this wasn't revenge anymore, it was responsibility. She whispered to herself. "Now I have to build what they tried to destroy." And for the first time, her eyes filled with quiet tears, not from pain, but from the sheer weight of survival. The empire that mocked her had fallen. But true power isn't about destruction, it's about what you build from the ashes. Subscribe now for more real stories where truth walks in and arrogance walks out. 3 weeks later, the rain had given way to sunlight. The kind of sunlight that made glass sparkle and the city hum with possibility. The red notice was gone. The locks were changed. The name Maison du Lys still hung above the entrance, but beneath it, a new plaque gleamed in gold script. The Cole Foundation for Culinary Equity, where every guest has a seat. Inside, the restaurant no longer smelled of tension and arrogance. It smelled of cornbread and rosemary. Of laughter. Of beginnings. The chandeliers still hung, but the light that passed through them seemed warmer now, softer, as if the building itself was exhaling after years of holding its breath. Vanessa stood in the center of the dining room, watching the final preparations for reopening night. The waitstaff moved with purpose. The new uniforms were simple, black aprons, gold pins that read "Respect served daily." Ethan stood among them, his posture humbler, his tone quieter. He approached her slowly. "Miss Cole," he said, voice careful. "Everything's ready." She nodded. "How are the community shifts?" He looked down, then back up. "Hard. Real hard." "Good," she said softly. "I used to think people like you wanted to prove something," he added. "Now I realize, you just wanted peace." Vanessa studied him for a long moment. "Do you think you've changed, Ethan?" He swallowed. "I think I'm starting to understand what change costs." She smiled, not out of victory, but grace. "Then you've learned more than most men ever will." That evening, the doors opened to a full house. But the guests weren't CEOs or politicians. They were teachers, single mothers, janitors, bus drivers, the very people who had been made to feel unwelcome before. The restaurant shimmered with a different kind of luxury now, not gold or linen, but humanity. At table 3 sat a young couple who'd saved for months to celebrate their anniversary. At table 5, an elderly black woman held her granddaughter's hand, whispering, "This place used to scare me. Now look at us." And near the back, a group of former kitchen staff from other restaurants, places that never gave them a chance, now laughing freely, wearing the same gold pins. Halfway through dinner, Vanessa stepped to the center of the room. The chatter dimmed. Every head turned. "I used to think power was about money," she said, her voice steady. "About ownership. About names on walls. But the truth is, power is simply the ability to decide how others are treated." She glanced toward Ethan, who stood by the door greeting guests. "When you change who holds that power," she continued, "you change everything beneath it, the policies, the tone, the air itself." She looked out at the tables. "Tonight isn't about revenge. It's about renewal. It's proof that you can take something built on arrogance and remake it with empathy." The room fell silent. Then, slowly, the applause began, hesitant at first, then thunderous, rippling through the air like healing itself. Later that night, as the last guests departed, Vanessa sat by the window with a cup of tea. Walker entered, carrying a box of old files. "You sure you want to keep these?" he asked. "They're the complaints. The ones from before." She took the box gently. "Their history," she said. "Painful, yes. But necessary. You can't heal what you hide." Walker nodded, his voice low. "You know. Crane resigned this morning." "I know. He sold his shares for a fraction of their worth. Rumor is, no one will hire him." Vanessa stared at her reflection in the window. "I don't need his punishment," she said. "I need his lesson to live longer than his legacy." Walker frowned. "You could have destroyed him, Vanessa." She looked at him, eyes soft but resolute. "I already did, the moment I refused to hate him." The clock on the wall struck midnight. Ethan appeared quietly by the door. He was holding an envelope. "This came for you," he said. Vanessa opened it. Inside was a letter, handwritten, shaky. "Ms. Cole. You don't know me. I'm a waitress in Texas. 2 weeks ago, a man insulted a black couple in our restaurant. Before, I would have stayed silent. But I remembered your story. I spoke up. Management backed me. The couple thanked me. That night, I went home proud for the first time in my life. You changed more than one restaurant. You changed me. Tasha Reed." Vanessa folded the letter carefully, pressed it to her chest, and whispered, "That's why." Outside, the city glowed. The same lights that once watched her humiliation now bore witness to her rebirth. She stood, turned off the dining room lights one by one, and whispered to the empty air. "Dignity doesn't ask for permission anymore." Then she walked out, leaving the restaurant bathed in golden moonlight, a symbol of what happens when the underestimated decide they've had enough. Vanessa had reclaimed her story, her name, and her purpose. But her final act wasn't about power, it was about peace. If you believe in redemption over revenge, like this video right now. They say revenge is sweet. But what Vanessa Cole discovered was something deeper, something far more powerful. Revenge satisfies the ego. Redemption feeds the soul. 3 months after that night, Maison du Lys, the same restaurant that once humiliated her, was featured in Forbes, The Guardian, and Ebony magazine. Not for scandal. For transformation. They called it the restaurant that rebuilt dignity. But to Vanessa, it was just a place that finally learned how to see people. In the early mornings, before the city woke, Vanessa still walked past the corner where it all began. The same cobblestones. The same smell of espresso drifting from the cafe across the street. Only now, the whispers had changed. "Did you hear what she did? That's her, the one who owns the restaurant now. The one who turned humiliation into history. People didn't point out of pity anymore. They pointed with respect. One Sunday morning, a young girl stopped her outside the restaurant. She was maybe 15, holding a notebook, her hair in braids. "Excuse me," the girl said shyly, "are you Ms. Cole?" Vanessa smiled. "I am. My mom showed me your story," the girl continued. "She said you didn't let them break you." I want to open my own restaurant one day too." Vanessa knelt so their eyes met. "Then promise me something," she said softly. "Promise me you'll never let anyone convince you that you're small." The girl nodded. "I promise." Vanessa placed a business card in her hand, gold embossed with her foundation's logo. "When you're ready," she said, "come find me. We'll make sure you get the keys." The girl's eyes filled with hope. And for the first time since that night, Vanessa felt something like peace wrap around her shoulders, gentle, warm, undeniable. Behind every viral headline, behind every lawsuit, behind every scandal, there's a human story. A heartbeat that refuses to be silenced. Vanessa's story wasn't about a spilled glass of wine. It was about centuries of dismissal. It was about the everyday indignities that people learn to swallow just to survive. But on that night, in that golden restaurant, a woman decided she'd had enough. She didn't fight back with rage. She fought back with ownership. She didn't destroy a man. She dismantled a mindset. By the end of that year, the Cole Foundation for Culinary Equity had trained over 400 hospitality workers nationwide. Bias complaints dropped by 60%. Employee satisfaction tripled. And for the first time, five-star service meant something more than linen napkins and imported wine, it meant humanity. Reporters asked her how it felt to win. She always gave the same answer. "I didn't win. We just stopped losing." That's the part people don't understand about stories like hers. The victory isn't in the downfall of the racist waiter. It's in the rise of every person who sees themselves in her, every woman told she doesn't belong, every worker dismissed, every black person underestimated, every dream deferred. Her story was a mirror, and in it, the world saw its reflection. Ugly at first. Then honest. Then capable of change. Months later, Vanessa wrote a letter, not to Ethan, not to Crane, not even to herself, but to anyone who had ever been humiliated for simply existing. It read, "They will underestimate you. They will mock your voice, your hair, your dreams. They will spill wine on your worth and call it an accident. But you will rise, not because you want revenge, but because you were never meant to stay small. Power changes hands every day. Make sure, when it's in yours, it feels like grace." So when people ask what this story is really about, the answer is simple. It's not about wine. It's not about ownership. It's about worth. It's about what happens when a black woman refuses to let humiliation be her final chapter, and turns it into the prologue of a movement. And maybe, that's the message we all need to remember. That the most powerful revolution doesn't happen in courtrooms or boardrooms, it happens in moments when we choose dignity over anger, integrity over pride, and action over silence. Because dignity, once awakened, doesn't bow again. If you've ever been dismissed, humiliated, or told you didn't belong, this story is for you. Share it. Speak it. Live it. Because silence protects no one, but truth changes everything. And when the world spills wine on your worth, make them watch as you by the table.